Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to show you today how to make this ink fades. I love these ink fades. They have so much depth when they it just sort of flows across the paper. A lot of people have asked me how I do these and also how I use metallics. So I'm going to do this video and show you both how to make ink fades with and without metallics, so you can create stuff like this. It is one of my favorite ink techniques. It takes a little patience to make these, and I'm going to show you today on Nara paper, which I absolutely love. It is so much better than any other paper I've tried. I'm going to make another video one day to show you the difference. So, first things first, you need to put on your gloves. Always use gloves. Mine are premium black. So what I'm going to be using today is this heat gun. I like the heat gun most. It has different settings and you can turn the heat up and down. And I use the lowest setting and the lowest amount of heat. Because if you use too much heat, you're gonna basically burn the paper. So we're also gonna be using Copic. I believe this is Cool Gray number 7. And this is my isopropyl in this lovely little container, which is my favorite, because you can control how much you put on the paper very easily so you don't overdo it. You're also going to need some paper to wipe off your gloves. So here we go. I'm going to start by putting down just a tiny drop of the cool gray. I'm going to take my isopropyl and I'm going to put it sort of halfway around the ink. Not all the way around, only halfway. And that is basically what you do to make a good fade. And just add a little bit more. I'm going to use my finger to sort of mix the ink in just a little bit. Wipe it off. And then I'm going to start swirling the ink very slowly around with the isopropyl. You need to have a little patience, because if you do it too fast, you're going to mix it in completely. So you just pick up the paper and very slowly move it around with the alcohol. Now you can do this for as long as you want until it looks the way you want it to. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit more here. Had a shape I didn't really like. You can always use your finger to sort of make it more round, whatever shape you kind of wanted. Oh, I made a mess. Just gonna wipe that off. So I added a little more alcohol and just going to swirl it again. Now when you do your last swirl, you do it towards the side where you have the most ink. I think it's right. Just going to make it a little more round. So now I got all the ink on one side. I'm going to dry it in this direction. If you start drying from the other direction, you're just going to completely ruin the fade. So, and you want to not put it on top of the ink, but next to the ink, where you have the least amount of color. And you just keep it there very, very slowly. And you just see the isopropyl very slowly starting to dry. You just wait. Sometimes you want to move it around the heat, but you really shouldn't, because this is how you get that fade to look so pretty. I think it's going to look a little weird towards the center because it's very hot and humid today in Denmark, which is actually not the best time to do ink. That's why I'm getting this sort of little dots. So that's a lesson for you. You do not necessarily need to do alcohol inks on the hottest day that you can find. It's almost dry now. I will say this might not be my best fade ever, but we're gonna do one more and see how it goes. It's looking a little funny. It's the humidity. We're gonna try and do one more. Gonna cover up some of the fade that you've already made. I'm going to add one tiny drop of ink and a little more isopropyl sort of halfway around. And then you just do what we did before. You swirl it. See, I'm going to cover up a lot of the fade that I made before because it wasn't all that pretty. I think this is going to be better. We're going to dry this, see what happens. Yeah, this is going to be pretty, I think. The ink is sort of running a little bit, but it's okay because when you're sort of making a new piece, you start adding more and more fades, and you just use some of the ink that you already have on the paper, and usually cover up a lot of the fades that you've already made. So if it's not perfect, it's okay really, because you can just cover it up with the next fade that you've done. Yeah, the humidity is annoying me a little bit. I really like this one actually. So we're going to make another one in the center where we have the most ink. Where am I going to put it? Right here, I think. Just going to add isopropyl this time and mix in some of the existing color because there's a lot of it. And some more isopropyl. I'm just going to swirl it around. So I didn't actually add any ink this time. I'm using the ink that is already on the paper. And then slowly swirling it around. Making a little more round. When you touch the ink with your fingers, remember not to use your thumb. Because when you pick up the paper to swirl it around, you have your thumb on the front of the paper and then you'll leave marks all over. I learned that the hard way. So never use your thumb when you're touching the ink. I like this one. It's very pretty. Slowly drying. When you sort of make the first fade on the papers, it looks a little boring, but once you start building them on top of each other, it's where the effect really happens. So, I think we're going to do one with some metallics. I'm going to be using silver. This is from Ranger, and I love all metallics, but silver is my favorite. it just goes with every color really. Don't forget to shake it. Always shake it really, really well. Now I am going to add one tiny drop of the cool gray and one tiny drop of silver, just right in the middle of the color. I'm going to do the same with the alcohol, sort of halfway around. I'm just going to slightly dab my finger into the silver, very, very gently. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start swirling it around. And the more I move it around the paper, the more it breaks up into little pieces. If you use a lot of air right down on the metallics, it's just going to blend in completely with the color. But when you swirl it like this, it starts breaking off into these tiny pieces. And it's going to end up around the edges of the fade, which is what I absolutely love. So slowly swirl it around and just watch the metallic move around the edges. Oh, I'm liking this one. And you keep swirling it until, yeah, I'm just gonna help the silver a little bit. Gonna wipe a little off here because I got a lot of alcohol on the paper. You have to dab it very, very gently or you're gonna ruin the silver effect. So I'm gonna dry this the same way before, keeping the heat gun next to the fade, not on top of the fade, but next to it. And see that nice dark edge that you have on this fade. I'm going to pick the paper up in a minute and show you in the light how the silver runs along the edges. This is going to be a good one, I think. I'm going to try. Let's see that silver. Look at that. It's so pretty. All around the edges. I'm going to do another one, I think. Where are we going to put it? I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to probably ruin a bit of the fade that I've just done, but that's okay. It all gives an amazing effect. So the same as before, one drop of ink, one tiny drop of the silver. I dab it very, very gently. And then you swirl it around again. Very slowly. You can see the silver already moving around. So you do need a bit of patience for this, but I think it's worth it. Look at those little pieces of silver just moving around. I love it. And again, you just keep swirling it until all the ink and all the silver is where you want it to be. Of course, it always moves a little when you start to dry, but that's okay. Now see, we've kind of cut into the ink fade that we made before a little bit, but it's okay. It just adds more depth. I'm just fixing it a little. We're going to dry this one. the next fade we're gonna do, I think I'm gonna show you how to use some of the silver that is already on the paper, because sometimes, in my opinion, one drop is just too much. Sometimes you don't need all that much to get the effect from the metallics that you want. So when you've already got a lot of silver on your existing fades, you can just use some of that for your next fade. Of course, it depends on how much silver or metallics you want on your piece, but for me, sometimes a drop is too much. I think this is really good now. Where are we gonna put it? Let's just see all that silver. All along the edges. Love that shine. Now, there's a lot of silver right here. So I'm going to use that for the next fade. And I am only going to add 1 drop of the gray, put the isopropyl on, and you can see it's mixing in with the silver that is already on the paper. So I'm just going to use that, dab it a bit, and then swirl it around again. See how much silver is actually on there. So you don't always need a lot of the metallics. Once, on a couple of fades, you use a drop, and then for the next phase, you just use the metallic that is already on the paper. We're starting to get all along the edges. So I'm going to dry it again, same direction. So you now have sort of a center on the piece. The fades all end up in the middle of the paper, which just creates so much depth and, well, excitement, let's just say. So slowly drying this one. I can see this is going to dry up a little funny too in the middle, because it's just too darn hot in Denmark today. It's okay. I still like it. And it's humid, some of the ink sort of ends up in little dots and doesn't dry completely, so do it on cooler days. Just gonna pick this up. You can see all that pretty silver along the edges. I could do another fade now on the other side of the paper and again use some of the silver that is already on, because there's a lot in the middle. But if you really want to go crazy with the silver, you just use as much as you want. This is sort of my personal opinion. I could do with half a drop sometimes. So this is how I do my ink fades and how I do metallics. Now it's tricky at first to get this metallics around the edges like this, but you just need to practice a little and remember to have some patience. And when you dry it, just do it really, really slowly so that you keep the shape and the metallics where you have them. If you move too quickly and you use too much air, you're going to sort of ruin the fade and the metallics will blow all over. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe. Here are a few of my other ink fades where I've used metallics, just a little inspiration. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.